Hello everyone. For this last video for Chapter 2, Section 210, we're going to focus on dividing fractions. So in this video, we're going to look at the process that you use for not only dividing what we think of as proper fractions, but also when it comes to dividing mixed numbers. So there's a couple of things that you want to remember when it comes to dividing fractions. First of all, the very first things that you're going to do is actually you are going to invert the divisor or use what we call the reciprocal of the divisor. So basically, the fraction that follows the division sign is oftentimes what you've heard as being flipped. So we're going to go ahead and flip the fraction that follows the division sign, and then we're going to take this division sign and we're going to turn it into multiplication. So when we're dividing, we're actually going to set it up to be a multiplication problem, and we already know how to multiply. So let's just go ahead and walk through the steps for this process. So what you see here is you have your 3/5, that remains the same. Then we're going to change that division sign to multiplication. Then we're going to use the reciprocal or invert the second fraction, which is also the divisor in this problem, and it's going to become 2/1. Now we know how to multiply a problem that looks like this. We just go ahead, multiply all the numerators. 3 times 2 is 6, and then we go ahead, 5 times 1 is 5. When we look at that problem, we know that it's set up as an improper fraction, so we need to change it to a mixed number. So we know that 5 divides into 6 one time, and then we have a remainder of 1. So our answer then becomes 1 and 1/5. That's our answer to this problem. So let's go ahead, we're going to look at a second one. In this one, as we looked at this, there was no canceling that could be done. So we're going to look at a problem where we can do some canceling, but the process remains the same. So we go ahead, we're going to look at this problem right here. Our first fraction remains the same. So we have our 11/12. We're going to take that division sign, change it to a multiplication sign. Then we're going to invert or use the reciprocal of the divisor that is here, and that becomes 3/2. So then we take a look. There's nothing we can do to cancel the 11 and 2, because remember we're looking at the crisscross. That doesn't work. But it does work for our 3 and our 12. So we're going to go ahead and divide both of these by 3. And what do we end up with? 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 goes into 12 4 times. So let's go ahead and multiply across. 11 times 1 is 11. 4 times 2 is 8. So let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and change this around so that 8 goes into 11 one time. 1 times 8 is 8. And that leaves us with a remainder of 3. So then we have 1 and 3 becomes our new numerator, and 8 remains the denominator. So that's how we go ahead, and we're going to do those with dividing fractions. So basically we're taking that division problem and changing it into multiplication. But let's look at when we are dividing mixed numbers. There's one more step that you have. Basically, you have to take that mixed number and we have to change it to an improper fraction. So let's look at our first example here. What we have is we have our mixed fraction here. So we multiply 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 makes 11, and 4 remains our denominator. We're going to keep it this way because we need to recognize that this stays the same, and at least for this first step. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to flip like we do before. So we have 11/4 times 2/1. Now, we can divide by 2, and this becomes 1. This becomes 2, and our answer, we end up with 11 halves, which, if we go ahead and we divide the 2 into 11, we know is going to be 5 and 1/2 is our answer for this problem. So let's look at our last one here. First things first, let's go ahead and convert them into improper fractions. So we have 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 makes 10 thirds. And I'm sorry, this should be divided by. So we're going to go ahead and take 10 thirds, and we're going to change this to an improper fraction. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11 fourths. So now we have to go ahead, and now that we've changed both of them to improper fractions, now we do our step where we use the reciprocal and change it to multiplication. So we get 10 thirds times 4 11ths. So if we go ahead and we multiply that, we end up with 40 33rds, which if we divide into the 40, we end up with 1. Subtract 33, we end up with 7. We get 1 and 7 33rds. This number is already in lowest terms, so it will not reduce. So our answer for this particular problem is 1 and 7 33rds. The thing to remember about dividing fractions is that we're going to change it into a multiplication problem, and when we do that, not only are we changing the division sign to multiplication, we have to use the reciprocal of the number that follows the division sign. So this is our last video that deals with fractions. In our next section of videos, we're going to be dealing with the different operations using decimals.